Martha doesn't pay for anything, and she would bleed a stone if it was possible. She wanted to get whatever she could get out of Kmart. Martha abused almost everything. If she came to headquarters for a day and a half, her personal telephone bill would be $200. Sometimes she wouldn't stay overnight and would leave when she could have given us more time. Martha wouldn't do anything for free. I didn't know of one charity event that she did for free. For a while, Kmart had her do March of Dimes events, and she got $3,000 apiece from the company. When she traveled, she'd have cars pick her up. She'd reserve the best hotel suites. She flew first class. Marilyn Gill said another problem was that Martha sometimes violated the terms of her travel agreement with the company by bringing along her attorney or an assistant and billing Kmart for their fares. There was a big brouhaha over all that because there was nothing in her contract that said that she had to travel first class or that we had to cover paying for anyone traveling with her. When the woman who was in charge of checking Martha's expense account questioned her charges, Martha would rip her from one end to the other, a Kmart official recalled. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Pettiness. We're going to keep going in the Martha Stewart book today. Last time we read, she had sort of just been attacked by a classmate. Erica Young had written a bunch of books. They were just these erotic pieces of trash is what they were. But there was a character who was very distinctly Martha Stewart. She'd used Martha Stewart and Martha Stewart's public image, and she said she didn't, but I mean, it was hard not to see the similarities, especially since she did know Martha and they actually ran in the same circles. So there had been a whole chapter about that. And then the next chapter that we started but weren't able to finish was entitled Business as Usual. And in that chapter, we had discussed Martha is, I would say, trying to cope with what's going on in her life by just buying a bunch of properties to make herself feel better. She's acquired two properties in the East Hamptons, and she was going strong when we stopped. Some of her purchases don't even really make sense. It's not really even her aesthetic, but she had heard that other people wanted this specific house by this architect. And so she swooped in and bought it because she could. And it was in an area so that her neighbors would be people that she was hoping to hobnob with. So it didn't really matter that she didn't like the house. She just wanted the society that came with the house. And she's always been a social climber. I mean, that is not shocking at all. But in the absence of Andy, she's got to do something to make herself feel better. So she needs to get closer and closer to the, hyper elite, because that'll make her feel like she's not this loser whose husband left her. Okay. The book goes on to say that by the fall of 1990, Martha's ninth book, the $50 Martha Stewart's Gardening, Month by Month, which she claimed had taken her 4 years to photograph and write, made the bestseller list. The first press run of 250,000 copies grossed $12.5 million, giving Martha about $1.5 million in royalties. Martha called it the best thing I've ever done, the best gardening book ever. By then her books in total had sold more than 2 million copies. As long as I'm alive, I'll be writing, she declared. She'd grossed more than $70 million for her publisher. I support Clarkson Potter, she boasted. By the early 90s, Martha had a personal income of about $2 million a year, but she claimed, I'm not rich. What do I do with my money? I put it back into my work. I don't have a big stack of gold in the closet. I'm very frugal. I don't have fancy things. By anybody's definition, Martha Stewart is doing well. And by the way, who buys a $3 million house that they don't even like just because they're so poor? I mean, what are you talking about, Martha? I'm frugal. I don't just spend my money willy-nilly. Okay, well, I hope to one day be this poor. Martha had become a cash cow. She had become the product. That fact was understood when Lorraine Perry, the director of product management at CBS Records, decided that the masses should get a taste of the label's classical music list. How, she wondered, could she generate interest in sales? Like Kmart's Barbara Lauren Snyder, Perry thought of Martha Stewart. People kept saying to me, I'm having people over to dinner. Do you have any tapes? And then instead of having liner notes, I thought recipes would be fun. The finished product was the CBS Masterworks Dinner Classics, a collection of CDs and cassettes designed as background music for special occasions and meals, such as the Sunday Brunch album and the Viennese album. Perry declared the collection a success, saying that each album was selling far beyond a traditional classical album, beyond anyone's expectations. Sunday brunch, in fact, quickly jumped into the Billboard's classical chart because the discs and tapes were sold where Martha Stewart wannabes shopped. One project that had to be completed post-haste was the Secrets of Entertaining videotape series, which had been thrown off course for a time by Andy's departure. Despite her problems with Martha, Kathy Tatlock had hung in, even though Martha was, according to Tatlock, nickel and diming her to death. Because of Tatlock's proposal and pitches, Crown had agreed to fund 3 videos, but Martha constantly argued with her over money. I said, "You just can't not pay me, Martha. It's all in the contract." And she said, "Well, I'm not paying you for any more creative services." And I said, "Martha, you're the star. You said the words, but I designed the entire program according to the proposal that I originally wrote. I planned the entire thing from start to finish. I'm not saying that you didn't contribute to figuring it out. You got the recipes and decided which ones you would do, but I did the work. I should get paid, don't you think?" And she said, "No, I'm not paying you." What? I don't get it. What has Kathy Tatlock ever done to her? Meanwhile, working with Martha on the set during production and editing had become hellish for Tatlock and Dick Roberts, the line producer, cameraman, editor. She had this very mercurial personality, Roberts noted. She changed from being the sweetheart. I once dropped a piece of ice cream on the kitchen floor while we were shooting, and she just blew up. I've been doing this kind of work for 35 years, so I just knew to walk very, very gently, be careful. If I said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, belched at the wrong time, I'd be in trouble. She'd have these blow-ups with Andy, and it would show on her face, and then somebody who was in her inner circle, either her mother or Sister Laura or whoever, would come out to the set and say, "Watch out, Martha's in really bad shape today." But she'd get on set, the lights would go on, and she'd be Martha Stewart no matter what. Then after the take, the phone would ring, and it'd be Andy, and she'd have this terrible argument with him in front of everybody. Members of the staff recalled that Martha was ripping people's heads off during the production, which was mostly shot in her studio kitchen, where the temperature hovered around 100 degrees because of the television lights and the cooking ovens. And nearly every break, Roberts ran to an open window to breathe fresh air, and he had started wearing an ice towel on his head to avoid heat stroke. Martha's disposition didn't help matters. She was sour. She was unpleasant. She was angry. It was horrible, a crew member said. Martha was a nightmare. As all hell was breaking loose around her, Tatlock was trying to direct Martha so that the final product would look professional, but Martha wasn't always cooperative. Martha left Kathy Tatlock in shreds, Dick Roberts noted. Tatlock's biggest problem had to do with Martha's style of speaking and her on-camera attitude. Martha had what is known in acting circles as an academic tone, that lofty tone of the intelligentsia that people adopt, she explained. She also had a very clipped delivery. She had very intentionally good pronunciation. She clipped her consonants. She popped her P's and B's. She gave a hoity-toity delivery. I told her, "Martha, you're giving a message to the common people. You have to be able to talk to people as one of them, not as somebody high and mighty." If she was in a lousy mood, she'd say, "Well, this is who I am, and this is the way it is. Don't you correct my grammar. Don't you correct my speech." The book goes on to say that it was the same with her accoutrements. I'd say, Mom and Pop, who will be watching this tape at home, are not going to be able to afford that $150 pan to poach fish, and it's going to cost another $100 for just the fish. And she said, "No, I want to give people something special. This is what I do, and I want it to be beautiful and unique." Things got even worse in the editing room. During important screening sessions, when final editing decisions were made, Martha sometimes fell asleep. Someone would have to rouse her and ask for her opinion, and she would groggily say, "It's wonderful, it's marvelous," and fall back to sleep. Later, she'd criticize the work and place the blame on others for screwing things up. 2 edits that Martha did oversee from start to finish were the excision of Robin Fairclough, floral consultant, from the credits of Secrets, and the deletion of Andy's name from the dedication and acknowledgments in Entertaining. Despite all the problems, the difficult video project was completed, and Martha Stewart's Secrets of Entertaining, like all her products, sold briskly despite mixed reviews. Diane White, a columnist for the Boston Globe who earned a reputation for writing a series of humorously scathing pieces about Martha over the years, wrote, "Men who never watched a minute of Julia Child have been known to take a sudden, uncharacteristic interest in cooking when a Martha Stewart special airs on PBS. It's understandable, I thought, watching as she tossed her blonde mane, raised her big brown eyes to the camera, grasped a cucumber and instructed viewers to slice it, thick enough to pick up but not too big to put in your mouth." While the New York Daily News noted that the tapes were filled with practical everyday tips and sensible cooking and entertaining suggestions, its critic pointed out that those tips and suggestions might be of value only to viewers who, like Martha, have herb gardens in the plural, commercial ovens, plenty of help, the patience to cut heart shapes out of bread and cucumbers. The video context in which these recipes are offered is so opulent it's offensive. Martha Stewart is possessed by her possessions and immorally oblivious of reality. The tapes will simply make a lot of viewers feel inadequate, as if they can't cook pork chops unless they have a service for 24. I think that's the thing about so much of what she did was it is inconceivable that she did that all on her own. Of course she didn't. She had all kinds of help behind the scenes, but you were supposed to feel like this was a possibility, that you could live like this. What I think about what Martha was doing, and what I think about a lot of influencers and a lot of the culture that we have now, is perfection and opulence is why you're watching, because it's fun to watch things that are pretty. It's fun to watch things that are perfect. It's fun to imagine that you could somehow get to a place where your life could look like that, but it can't. And you have to be honest with yourself. So if you want to just watch it because it's fun to watch something that's beautiful and nice, then you need to know, I'm watching this because I like the perfection of it, but I'm not watching this because I'm lying to myself and believing this is attainable. It's just pretty. I like to watch it because it's pretty. You save yourself a lot of heartache if you're just honest with yourself. That person did that because they had a whole staff helping them. And all these influencers that are making me feel like my life is less than has a whole crew that is helping them do all of this stuff. It took 7 people to get this video done and get this reel edited and all of this. But the reality is all these like huge influencers have people helping them. And it's just you in your little kitchen trying to like feed your kids at the witching hour. I mean, it's like, stop comparing yourself and then you won't be so unhappy. But I'm bothered by these articles that were written about Martha, then articles that are written about, let's see, there's an influencer whose Instagram is Ballerina Farms. And people are constantly like, she's trying to make this whole lifestyle. And like, I'd never do this. Yeah, you can't, because they have help. And if you are choosing to decide to feel inadequate in the knowledge that these people are doing this stuff with help, but you're still lying to yourself and being like, no, they're doing it themselves. And now I feel bad. I'm inadequate. You're doing that to yourself. These people are writing about Martha Stewart and being like, she's making people feel bad. Well, you can choose to feel bad or not feel bad. If I'm watching a Martha Stewart video, knowing that there was a whole bunch of people who helped her with that, and then I still choose to feel like I feel inadequate, that's on me. That's my fault. And people who watch these influencers and get all bent out of shape because they're like, she's pretending she doesn't have help. Well, she does. She has to. You can choose to get bent out of shape, or you can just like go live your life. Kathy Tatlock, who was excited at the beginning of Secrets because Martha wanted her to work on future TV and video projects, had gotten the axe when she demanded that she be paid money owed her under their contract. Tatlock was forced to hire a lawyer to get the $33,741.17 in fees, not including promised royalties. In the end, Tatlock was so devastated by her experience that she decided not to pursue the matter further and settled for Martha's final offer of $18,000. What is the deal with everybody just letting her run over them like this? Like, story after story after story, time and time again. Well, I just didn't want to fight about it anymore. Well, I just decided, this person owes you $33,000 and then like throws you $18,000 and is like, we're good, right? Everything's squared away? Okay. There's the door, bye. I don't understand how a person's contract says that I'm supposed to get paid $33,000. And then my employer gives me $18,000 and I'm just like, well, I just don't want to argue about it. Well, you don't have to. That's why you had a contract. Kathy really felt that if she had pursued a lawsuit with Martha, her life might be in danger. Oh, well, I guess there's our answer, Claire McCulley asserted. Other people who have seen Martha as this happy homemaker would think, oh, that's just sick on Kathy's part. I don't think so. For me, that's not a leap. I feel Martha could do harm. Oh, okay, well, I can understand now why Kathy backed away. Tatlock said she never felt physically threatened, but she did find Martha frightening at times. I must say I was afraid of her when we were starting to have problems because she would just be so fierce, but so pulled back at the same time. And to me, that's the most scary kind of rage. If someone gets up and screams and yells and makes a scene, I understand that. But if somebody's eyes are just speaking rage and frustration and hatred and it's all pulled into themselves, I think that's frightening. And that's what I saw in her. After this had all happened, she called me one day out of the blue and asked me to go to lunch. And I said, Martha, I don't know what you're thinking. Why would I want to go out to lunch with you after what you did to me? And she said, well, I thought it would be fun. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that Martha is in control here. I feel like Martha is functioning from some deep, dark forces. I mean, I make a lot of jokes. There is a great deal of energy about her that is not safe, good. There's a darkness to the way that she functions in the world, the way she denies people the things that are their rights. It's very weird. The fact that she would deny Kathy and not pay her what she owes her, and think that that was fair, and think that Kathy was absurd for asking for what was in the contract, and then to call her up and be like, let's go to lunch, and not even get that Kathy would be mad. I was like, what is wrong with her? Dick Roberts, who remained on good terms with Martha after Tatlock's departure, signed a contract to produce and direct a series of 30-second Kmart TV spots called At Home with Martha Stewart. The concept had been conceived by Barbara Lawrence Snyder for Kmart as a marketing and advertising tool. We did these commercials on a very low budget because Martha would always get her pencil out, Roberts said. And I had to work very quickly, and because we were working fast and on the cheap, we didn't have a generator, and we'd been blowing out the power lines, and the power company was always being called out. Martha's neighbors had already been infuriated with all the disruptions, so we had to be very, very quiet about what we were doing. Meanwhile, on the set, Martha was playing the role of glamorous star, regaling the young men on the crew with provocative stories about her bachelorette adventures at New York parties. For instance, she told them how she had run into Warren Beatty and wouldn't have minded effing him. The crew guys found her manner off-putting and embarrassing. On another occasion, she tried to entertain them with risque jokes. One about a blowjob made everyone in earshot uncomfortable. Well, if you saw my video yesterday, where I was talking about Martha Stewart's continual selfies, this doesn't surprise me even in the least. Like, she really thinks that she's this sort of sexy pinup sort of person. Some kind of babe that is so alluring that she can talk trash, and she's so hot that the guys aren't, like, put off by it. Like her talking ugly is like their secret desires, you know. They really want to hear Martha Stewart just, like, talk filthy. And in my experience, I have never sat with a bunch of guys and let filth fall out of my mouth, but I've heard guys talk about women who have done that. It never lands the way women think that it will. There tends to be this idea from movies that guys want you to be one of the guys and, you know, keep up with them and their barbarism. And I have never found any guys to be like, it's so hot when she tells that joke about a blowjob. And I'll tell you something right now. Sorry to get way off. You remember that movie, Good Will Hunting, and Minnie Driver's character tells a disgusting joke at a table with the three of the guys? And we're supposed to believe that this was this great bonding moment in which they found out that she was like just like one of them and she like could hang with them. And I've always thought to myself, that's the point when those guys would have stopped liking her. That was not the point in which they would have started liking her. And any guy in the comments, do you guys remember this scene? When Minnie Driver's sitting at the table telling the joke and she's got like water pouring out of her mouth. It's a blowjob joke. And do you guys remember this? It's so off-putting. But we're supposed to believe that this was the time when she's, you know, really this winsome character that they can't believe they've captured into their midst. Men, please. I know there's very few of you who watch this, but every man who is watching this right now, please sound off in the comments. Is that something guys want from girls? Or is my theory correct that that is the minute when guys stop respecting you? They might keep you around because clearly you might be good for something later, but they don't like you because of it. Anyway, one member of the crew who had come to the job knowing and liking Martha was the Broyard's daughter, Bliss. I thought of her as a wonderful example of the confident, aggressive, successful woman. Bliss, a year younger than Lexi, was just graduating from the University of Vermont and had gotten the month-long TV gig through Dick Roberts, also a friend of the Broyards. The young woman's main job, besides gophering, was to act as Martha Stewart's hand double. Martha Stewart's hands were in terrible shape after years of yard work, and Roberts felt that they weren't attractive enough for television. When a close-up was required of Martha's hands, Bliss Broyard was shot instead. That's ridiculous. Because, yeah, I mean, I know she does have torn up hands and stuff, but who is going to believe that Martha Stewart, this woman, you know, in her advanced 40s, has the hands of this young college-aged girl? Wouldn't it have been really obvious that those weren't Martha's hands? After a few weeks of working closely with Martha, Braillard's positive feelings began to change, and she came away from the project thinking of Martha as a strange, insecure, and sad woman. She was a perfectionist, Braillard learned early on. It was difficult to do things the way she wanted. I was taking things from her house to decorate the set, and she was obviously concerned about getting them back in the right place. She even suggested I take Polaroid pictures before I removed something, so I'd know where to put it back. Her life was so regimentally scheduled that she didn't really have time for a lot of niceties. She was intimidating, very demanding, and could be really bitchy. Occasionally I had to put on her clothes for these hand shoots, and she was perfectly rude. She'd say, "This is a $700 Donna Karan alligator belt, just so you know." I had never known her before as a celebrity, and she would vacillate between feeling entitled to a lot of attention and being insecure. Despite the fact that Martha intimated that she had a glamorous life, Braillard came to believe that she didn't have a lot of real friends and led a rather lonely life. That fact was underscored one afternoon when Martha asked her to fetch something from her bedroom upstairs at Turkey Hill. There were 4 bedrooms, and each were beautifully decorated, but none had any evidence of someone actually living in them. They all looked like gorgeous hotel rooms. I said, "Martha, which room is your bedroom?" And she said, "Oh, you know, I sort of sleep in all of them, not one in particular." And that seemed sad to me, her not having one bedroom of her own. I saw her as being lonely, and not somebody who would spend a lot of time in a beautiful corner of her house with a book. The whole house was furnished like a museum. While her whole business was creating a sense of home, she didn't seem too comfortable in her own home, in the way that one would think. She was always so busy developing projects, so ambitious, that she never slowed down enough to want to enjoy the comforts of home. But yet this was the thing that she sold, this kind of warmth and family. Quite a contradiction, this Martha Stewart. And that's why her telling lies about her childhood and creating this whole vision of a world in which it was just this happy family who were trying to make it in America, these, Polish immigrants who gathered around the table for some of their Polish food and love and good times with grandma and all this. I think that's why she could believe the hype that she created about her past, because she was selling something currently that she wasn't living. She was currently selling the idea that she had created this beautiful home that she loved to enjoy and just wanted to share those things with you, but she wasn't enjoying her home. So for her to look back in the past and write about a tale that had not actually happened but call that her own, why are we surprised? Her whole life is one in which she is telling you a story and claiming it to be her current experience or her past experience, but neither one is true. Now this next chapter is called Tuna on Toast. Like Martha, Frank Costaro was creative and had an entrepreneurial bent, though nowhere near the Himalayan scale of his sister. For a time he operated a little picture frame shop, and he made a modest living as a handyman, builder, and contractor, but he constantly was thinking of ways to make big money, much like their father and now like his sister. When Martha became the $5 million spokeswoman for Kmart's housewares division, Costaro thought he saw an opportunity for himself and other members of the Costaro clan to start a little cottage industry and cash in on some of the wealth that only Martha was accruing. Costaro's idea, which looked good on paper, was to design and produce a line of logo aprons. Look who's entertaining with Martha Stewart. Look who's cooking with Martha Stewart. And sell them exclusively through Kmart. On his own, Costaro spent money and time researching the manufacturing process. He also found a source for second-hand embroidery machines that could be picked up dirt cheap in a third-world country, and he located an idle plant in the Carolinas where the aprons could be inexpensively manufactured. Even with the manufacturing costs and overhead, he figured that the profit would be outstanding, unbelievable, on a sale price of $19.95. People would buy them up because they already have Martha's books, Costaro predicted at the time. With all his research completed, Costaro pitched the idea to Martha. I laid it at her feet and I told her that Laura would be involved and that Mom could get involved and that it would help the whole family and that we'd all come away filthy rich. But Martha wouldn't bite. "No one in this family is going to come riding in on my coat-tails," she snarled according to Costaro. "You are not coming in on my success." When he described his sister's response to their mother, she shrugged knowingly. "Well, Frank, you know how she is. Martha's Martha." Eventually, Frank's simmering anger toward Martha boiled over. Envious of her success, hurt by her rejection, he took the road many scorned relatives of the rich and famous have taken. In 1996, he sold tell-all stories about his sister to the tabloids. The family is very disappointed in his inexplicable behavior, a spokesman for Martha said in response to a New York Magazine gossip item headlined, "Martha's Living Nightmare." But, okay, let's just talk real quick about old Franco Syra. Frank, that idea wasn't going to make you rich. Making aprons that said, "Look who's cooking with Martha Stewart," is not the ticket to ride that you think that it is. Because after the 300 people who would want something like that have bought it, then what? You're going to need some more items than just an apron that says, "Look who's entertaining with Martha Stewart." I mean, I just can't even imagine how you could market that to become like this big millionaire that he thought he was. Like, that's not even a product that anybody would just be rushing to go get. It's such a novelty, like a little novelty apron with a little saying embroidered on it. Obviously, making merch is what people do, but we're going to need a couple of different items. We can't just make aprons that say, "Look who's cooking with Martha Stewart," and expect to be a millionaire based off of that. Like, you're a millionaire because of all the other stuff you've done. The merch is just sort of like a couple of, that's like grocery money. That's not where all your money's coming from. I mean, how much money do you think it was going to make that the whole family was going to profit off of this? If one person managed to make any money, you couldn't divide it up. I mean, I don't know. I sort of see why Martha was like, "I don't like any of this." I think she didn't need to scream at him and say, "Nobody's going to ride in on my coattails." But she had been, she'd had Laura working for her for a long time. Now, she wasn't nice to Laura, but I wouldn't say Laura was riding on her coattails. She was employed by Martha, just like a lot of other people were employed by Martha. But for Frank to try to like scoop up her name and make these aprons and then come to her with dollar signs in his eyes over this lame idea, like, the whole thing would bother me just because it was a dumb idea. Not even the fact that he was riding my coattails, but the fact that it's like, but no, come back when you have a better proposal. Anyway, the book goes on to say that this idea that, that's just Martha being Martha, was the same conclusion in which a number of executives at Kmart came after having several years of sticky dealings with their star attraction. But to those outside looking in, particularly the news media, which gave extensive coverage to the ironic upscale Martha Stewart downscale Kmart alliance, everything looked as cheery as the Martha Stewart brand pre-call sheets and towels that were nice, but weren't exactly leaping off the shelves. In fact, the upbeat corporate statement and the confident public performances by Martha masked an ongoing internal war. "She never really did do the job that she was supposed to do," declared Barbara Lauren Snyder, who brought Kmart together with the domesticity diva. From the very beginning, Martha's attitude was that she didn't want to have Kmart as the force behind her. She wanted a better, bigger, more substantial company with a better image. What she was saying for public consumption wasn't the way she really felt, and wasn't the way she acted within the company. I had frequent meetings with Joe Antonini because it disturbed me greatly. Jacqueline Smith would get on a TV show and talk about her fabulous clothes and show great pride in her product and talk about Kmart. That was the way I'd hoped Martha would be, but that never worked. Martha actually did a disservice to the company in the way she acted about Kmart. She never talked about the company if she didn't have to. There's dozens of memos to and from Joe Antonini about Martha and how she wasn't promoting the company publicly the way we wanted her to. If she went on a TV show and talked about one of her Christmas projects, she should have referred to the fact that the products were available at Kmart, but she would never do that. Martha liked the Kmart money. Martha did not like Kmart, and there was nothing that we could do about it. I quickly learned that Martha Stewart was a very dishonest person. She would lie and manipulate to get what she wanted, and she would do it right to your face. Others within the company also were having problems with Martha on a variety of issues. Of particular concern was Martha's use of corporate travel and entertainment. If Kmart required her presence for an in-store appearance in a certain city, Martha would arrange to schedule an unrelated engagement in that same city for which another party also was paying her travel and expenses. That kind of double-dipping infuriated the Kmart people, who believed that for the money that they were paying her and the promotion they were giving her, Martha owed Kmart exclusivity and loyalty. In those instances, Martha was collecting double, and that happened a number of times, asserted Marilyn Gill, then Kmart's divisional merchandising manager for home fashion and the day-to-day overseer of the Martha Stewart promotion. The contract itself was kind of loose in some areas, and Martha knew the loopholes. And because it was so loose, there was a lot of wars. The dishonesty of that is insane. Martha really wasn't functioning with any kind of moral code. That's so dishonest. To take Kmart's money, let them pay for your flight, let them pay for your staying. Meanwhile, you have another company also paying for your travel expenses, also paying for your hotel, and you're just pocketing all that cash. You don't need to have, been raised in some kind of austere fundamentalist household to know that treating people like this, lying to them, taking money, you know, running around grabbing bags of cash from different companies is not the way to do. This double dipping system that she had created, real trashy. But if the double dipping thing doesn't blow you away, listen to this. I don't even know how she got away with this kind of stuff. It says one of the most blatant examples of apparent avarice on Martha's part involved a lunch that she served to several executives during a meeting at Turkey Hill. Martha laid out a simple spread of tuna sandwiches, iced tea, and fruit. Then she submitted the tab to Kmart for a whopping $1,000. First of all, let me just talk about how embarrassing it is that Martha Stewart have people over and then serve tuna fish sandwiches. Like the lunch of every overtaxed mother who's like, oh, we need to eat something for lunch, Tuna fish sandwiches to a bunch of executives who come to your house. Like you are making cookbooks, you're talking lifestyle, you're over there talking about beluga caviar, and then they come to your house and you slide tuna on white across to the table to them. And they're like, there's some fruit over there if you want it. Glass of iced tea? $1,000. Was the fish made out of gold? Like, what are you talking about? That was pure Martha. Barbara Lauren Snyder, who was present for the lunch, chuckled later. Martha doesn't pay for anything, and she would bleed a stone if it was possible. She wanted to get whatever she could get out of Kmart. Martha abused almost everything. If she came into headquarters for a day and a half, her personal telephone bill would be $200. Sometimes she wouldn't stay overnight and would leave when she could have given us more time. Martha wouldn't do anything for free. When I was involved with her, I didn't know of one charity event that she did for free. For a while, Kmart had her do March of Dimes events, and she got $3,000 apiece from the company. When she traveled, she'd have cars pick her up. She'd reserve the best hotel suites. She flew first class. Marilyn Gill said another problem was that Martha sometimes violated the terms of her travel agreement with the company by bringing along her attorney or an assistant and billing Kmart for their fares. There was a big brouhaha over all that because there was nothing in her contract that said that she had to travel first class or that we had to cover paying for anyone traveling with her. When the woman who was in charge of checking Martha's expense account questioned her charges, Martha would rip her from one end to the other, a Kmart official recalled. Early on, Kmart had retained the Manhattan advertising firm of Callett, Hirsch, and Spector to carry out the planning and ad campaigns for the Martha Stewart Kmart Alliance and produce a series of television commercials starring the new spokeswoman. The Park Avenue South shop had handled image-making spots and advertising for politicians like Jacob Javits and big corporations such as Corning and Westinghouse. Peter Hirsch, the creative director and one of the firm's partners, thought Kmart's decision to go with Martha Stewart was brilliant. As a neighbor of hers, he lived in Fairfield, next door to Westport. He was intimately aware of her reputation for perfection, going back to her days as a caterer, and he thought her books were beautiful. But he was also aware of how Martha's greed was causing dissension and feared that it would injure her within Kmart. Her pettiness caused a lot of friction, Hirsch maintained. I talked to Martha about this several times, but she had come from this poor Polish family in New Jersey, so she would charge Kmart if she used a napkin. She would bake pies for the marketing director for use at a charity event, and she would charge them a lot of money for the pies. Martha believed that she should get paid for every word that came out of her mouth, for every morsel of food that she served. The Polish New Jersey person came out. I think she thought she was going to be starved to death tomorrow, so she wanted to make money, and she wasn't sensitive to or didn't care about other people's take on her. I said, Martha, you're being foolish. You have in the palm of your hand a multi-million-dollar public relations campaign to promote yourself nationally, and you're screwing it up because you're charging them for a tuna fish sandwich. For 89 cents, you're going to blow millions. These guys aren't used to dealing with strong women, and you're shooting yourself in the foot by doing this. They're going to get angry at you and turn off the money faucet. You're going to become famous with their money. You're not using your money, so don't charge them for all these little petty things. She listened to me, and I thought I got somewhere with her. So the next thing she did was cut the cost of her pies at Kmart to $20 a piece. It's funny. She just couldn't stop herself. I couldn't believe it. Who bakes pies for a charity event and then charges the charity for the pies? Isn't that the whole point of the charity event, that you're doing it for free out of the goodness of your heart? But I suppose that would mean you'd have to have a heart. Martha's treatment of people also raised eyebrows and caused problems for her with the Kmart hierarchy. Everyone below Joe Antonini and above me hated the Martha Stewart program, and they hated Martha, Marilyn Gill said. They felt she wasn't a real person. If Jaclyn Smith came in, she was so sweet. If Martha came in, her attitude was, "Who the hell are you?" They didn't like her because she didn't care about them. If you were in the restroom and Jaclyn came out of one of the stalls, she'd say, "Hi, how are you today?" and talk to you. If Martha came out, she'd fix her makeup and walk out. She'd talk to Joe because Joe was in power and had the authority, but the rest of them she didn't care about. Other than Joe, no one wanted Martha there. It was a constant war. Peter Hirsch also had observed that Martha tended to treat people shabbily, and it wasn't always Kmart executives who took her heat. One of Martha's assistants was her sister, the widowed Laura Herbert, who remarried in 1990. "A bunch of us were having dinner at Joe's Pier, and we were all having a drink before dinner," recalled Hirsch. When Laura ordered a second drink, Martha snapped at her sister and said something really nasty, and Laura just broke down sobbing. It was an embarrassing situation. Martha certainly was mean to her. It was terrible. Laura was working for Martha, and Martha laid a lot on her sister and put her through pure hell, bossing her around, treating her like the maid, always being very sharp with her. For Martha to do that to her own sister in front of people from a production company, an advertising agency, and the client was a little nuts. A little. But see, that's Martha. We already know that Laura had a drinking problem and that she probably was a pretty serious alcoholic. So she probably shouldn't have been having even the first drink. But Martha was going to make herself feel better and to exercise her own sense of superiority because she didn't struggle with drinking that we know of, and decided to attack Laura for what she saw was clearly one of Laura's weaknesses. Laura knew she was an alcoholic. Laura probably knew she shouldn't have had that first drink. But then to order a second drink when everybody was just still on their first, Martha felt that she had rights to point that out to Laura. Because she's already so mean to Laura over things that aren't even worth mentioning. But this thing was, in Martha's opinion, worth mentioning. But if you were really worried about your sister having that second drink when you knew that she was struggling with drinking in the first place, this would be a great time to maybe take somebody aside and be like, "Laura, are you doing okay?" Because if you knew Laura was trying not to drink and then you saw that she was having that second drink, maybe don't embarrass her and make her want to drink more to drown out how badly she feels. Hirsch worked closely with Martha, liked her, and thought she worked diligently on commercials, even though she talked like a wasp but wasn't really a wasp. But he came to the conclusion that while she was very creative and very inventive and brought a modicum of taste to the Kmart line, she also was an absolute control freak, which he saw was causing constant friction with just about everyone at Kmart headquarters below the level of Joe Antonini. And he noted that unlike Jaclyn Smith, Martha had absolutely no loyalty to Kmart. By the late summer of 1990, the third year of Martha's 5-year contract, Kmart had spent $27.9 million to market her, not including product costs and royalties that had been paid out. But 1989 sales had totaled only $12.4 million. They are bleeding money out at this point. $27.9 million to market her, and she's only brought in $12 million? Lose this woman. Clearly, those dismal numbers had not escaped the attention of key Kmart honchos and advisors. The sales seemed inadequate for the investment. Martha Stewart overall represents a very small, almost insignificant volume for Kmart, a consultant's memo stated. What it represents is an image builder, a unique product for our customers. If we fail, we'll have questions to answer from customers, from press, and from manufacturers. A lot of people at the top of Kmart, Joe Antonini included, were clearly worried about how the Martha Stewart program was being handled. As the memo pointed out, sales to date are small, investments large! Does Martha Stewart make sense for Kmart? Martha, the memo stated, should be the umbrella for the chain's whole bed and bath area, and as a spokesperson, she should be used to bring customers into the department. But Martha, the memo continued, was partly to blame for the program's initial failure. The memo read, quote, "Martha very early on alienated Kmart people by her cold, haughty exterior. She turned off buyers and merchandisers with her attitude. She's a difficult person to work with, but as with all the talented people, we needed to prove to her that we had the talent to do what we had promised to do. Additionally, she turned off those most prepared to help push the program by her greed, thoughtlessness, lack of concern for cost, and her inability to use the words Kmart when being interviewed, to interject Kmart when the opportunity presented itself on television, in print, or in lectures." With 2 years remaining on her contract, which eventually was extended, Kmart began testing a Martha Stewart magazine with 8-page inserts in women's magazines. Planning had also started on a direct mail Martha Stewart Kmart catalog. The catalog would not have a Kmart logo, but would have the appearance of being Martha's, with a warm, friendly, and informative editorial focus. There was a strong push for the catalog idea because Martha had already put out the word that if Kmart wasn't interested, she'd use the concept with her next corporate partner, Time Warner. That's where we're stopping today, you guys. What a wench. But I gotta tell you, Jerry Oppenheimer, his biographies are now like the only ones I want to read on this channel. They are so good. And there's like a stack of like this many of them. I mean, I just like want to read these, you know? I just want to read these. I have no interest in reading anything but Jerry Oppenheimer. Everything else is going to pale in comparison, you guys. I did see this biography. No, it's not a biography. This memoir, sort of. I pre-ordered it. We'll see how it is. It's called, what is it called? No, I can't remember. Basically, it's like the secret lives of the servants of the royal family, of the modern royal family. I'm pretty excited about that, you guys. So we'll have that to look forward to. Obviously not a Jerry Oppenheimer book, but on point for this channel. And then, of course, not a Jerry Oppenheimer, but also very exciting is the book about Prince Andrew and Fergie that's coming out in August. But what do we need to read after this book? Because I'm just Jerry Oppenheimer all the way, you guys. I just cannot tear myself away from this man's investigative journalism. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on this Martha book. We're so close to being done and it makes me sad. But until I can decide on the next book, we'll just have to do like lots of pop culture stuff. But it makes me sad that we're coming to a close on it. So maybe I'll put up some other Jerry Oppenheimer biographies and we can take a vote on what we want to read next. But thanks so much for hanging out with me. I will see you guys soon. I'll see you guys tomorrow for a Friday news roundup. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend after that. All right. See you soon. Bye.